Greetings. Welcome to another video. Um, we're going to try to get to the stuff we referred to in the last video about a brief history of, I'm calling the video the European corporations because that's where it came from. Okay. That's what we saw. The East Indian Corporation is one of the very first to dominate on American soil. So we did have other topics. So we'll see what happens. I realize I say things, but we just have to see how they pan out, right? But one thing I know I wanted to do after the video on, a history of corporations, I rediscovered Dane Calloway's one his what I believe is his very first article that went basically viral, and I thought I would like to read that article because partly because it sets the record straight in terms of he speaks to what actually happened. And I don't know if we're grasping that because I said it often, and I'm gonna say it again. Okay, when it comes to Carib Indians, I think a lot of North Americans may feel North American Indians may feel that somehow Caribbeans are Negropeans, shall we say. And I think when we revisit Dane's viral article, we will get another view on the fact that it happened in reverse. What does that mean? My reading is that even Dane himself is telling us who went where. Okay? Carib Indians were taken to Europe. It wasn't that we were Negropeans and then we became enemies of the North American Indians. We were the very first Indians to be taken. My assertion is that these are the ones who were deported to North America. That's where that ship sails, from my understanding, and what I'm seeing, in addition to what Dane has said. So we're going to read that, but we're going to read the whole article just to revisit what I think an article that really got the message out. I think it has, caused a lot of, I want to say dissension. Instead of our Indians celebrating the fact that this message got out, period. Lord knows we do our YouTube videos and it's like we're in a vacuum. I don't know, it's like there is no viral YouTube videos talking about us being Indians. But this particular article, well, I know it helped me to start to investigate further. And I'm just saying what happened. I think we got to decide what is more important. Is it the message getting out, or is it one of us has to be known as the one who first said it? What is more important to the people? And that's a question that American Indians will have to ask themselves. Is it about the messenger, or is it about the message that reached the masses and began a dialogue to some degree, to a very large degree? This is not a time for the crabs in a bucket syndrome. And I just have to be real. I have to say it. I have to say it. And I don't care that my platform is small. I really don't give a darn. I'm doing what the ancestors require of me. And however that message gets out, to whatever degree, the ancestors will be pleased. My soul will be able to rest easy. I don't want my life to be consumed by, something like, but I don't mind feeling that I done my part, and that's not to brag. It's just that I realize it's important enough to have taken as much time as I've given it. So that's what it's about for me. The ancestors will do the message that I have, will reach those who it's meant to reach, and I will accept that gladly. No shame, no nothing like that. It is all good, seriously. It is seriously all good with my soul, okay? So without further ado, I think I'm done. Let's read the famous article. Let's revisit it. If I have to say fair use, I say fair use. I don't think I have to do it with literature, but we'll do it just to be sure. This is very respective of Mr. Calloway's work, so we won't be talking against the work or the person of Mr. Dane Calloway. So let's dig in. 98% of African Americans are in fact Native Indians and are owed millions. Pretty much the title says everything, right? He's factoring in a reparations element, right? Which is very necessary as far as I'm concerned. Somebody gonna have to pay for this. I'm sorry. You can act like it's impossible. All things are possible when you have committed a wrong. We read that Germany almost went under paying back for what they did, right? So it's not about saving the entity that committed the crime. If you go under, you go under. That's how it was looked at. You shouldn't be here anyway. Let's just be real, okay? You should not be here in American Indians' land or on American Indians' land, taking their birthright each and every day when we have a right to say how our resources are used. We have a right to say how many foreigners will be on our land at any given time. Okay, so let's read that title again. 98%, that's damn near everybody. And it's facts, okay, facts. 98% of African Americans are in fact Native Indians and are owed, we might even have to put like trillions on that. I'm just saying, this is not a critique. The level of damage done to us, the libelous or slanderous defamation that we have endured so that we are non-existent on our land is almost beyond repair. But you know what? It's within repair. It is within repair. Getting a little choked up there. But you know, the ancestors got me. They got me. I'm good. I'm good. I had to take a deep breath there, catch our breath. Even if it means the end of this corporation, so be it. Are we advocating violence? No, we are not. We are saying unlawful corporations, just as Anna Wrightsinger has informed us, are due for a dissolution off the land. And she has taken it to the Pope, who is head of all corporations. Okay. Okay. So let's proceed. This was written, let's see, was there a date? August 28th, 2016. Dane Calloway. The beautiful sister. The tens of millions of Black Americans, or rather Indians, who disappeared after 1492 did not all die in the Holocaust inflicted within America. Hundreds of thousands were shipped to Europe and Africa as Indian slaves. So this is what I kind of want to draw on. West Indians were taken to Europe. Lee Cummings says in his book, his series, The Negro Question, he says that Europeans were deported to North America. But you see, we were not European. We had been Europeanized. In fact, the Europeans took on our West Indian accent. That we didn't get that from them. How do the oldest people on earth get an accent from Caucasian people or Europeans, like in the UK, like a Scottish or a British or Irish accent? No, it's the other way around. The first people were speaking like that, and then the Europeans picked up on that accent. So the West Indian accent became the accent of the Europeans of the UK, not the other way around. Are we clear? All right. So, again, they take our people, they use us up to build, you know, their country, whatever, a form of slavery. And then they deport us back to, not to the Caribbean, though, we're deported to North America. We still know how to farm, right? So what those people were prisoners of a war, particularly West Indians. We were kidnapped. Yes, I speak of my grandmother, my maternal side, West Indian. Now my paternal side, I know my father to be, or his family to be, of North Carolinian descent. But there was a lot of trade between Barbados and the Carolinas. And that's where my grandmother was from. and my grandfather on my mother's side. So the Caribbeans would have been the very first prisoners of colonization, should we say. We were not intending on being at war, that we had a war come to us, the war called Columbus, right? And we were taking, as this article opens saying, I think people forget this part of the article or forget this whole narrative. But that is why when our people were dumped back in the Americas, North America, I think that's why it wasn't really a big deal, because all we saw was ourselves, with a different accent, but them was our people. That's why, they were able to be dumped on us, and it really wasn't a war. Those are our own people that they were using basically to, start that whole notion that we're not Indians, in fact, the people that were dumped in America during King James era were the very first Indians that were kidnapped. Pocahontas would come like a centuries later, in the 1600s. I'm guessing is when she was taken. Yeah. Now we were taken in 1400, right? Late 1400, the West Indians. So we just that's really what I wanted to really stress. But we're going to continue reading. The whole slave trade story was given to all of us in reverse. A mass colony of Africans were not shipped from Africa to America. The truth is that Black Indians were shipped from America to Europe. They were then shipped from Spain to Africa as commodity for African resources. These Black Indians, now mistaken as African Americans, were shipped back to America and classified as African slaves. They're using our people to create a whole narrative that we're from Africa. No, we were kidnapped and taken to Africa and Europe. That's what he says. That's the first sentence. We're shipped to Europe and Africa as Indian slaves. So I want our Indians to be very clear that the whole Indian thing, even the name Indian, it begins in the Caribbean, okay? The term Indian began in the Caribbean. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'll put it to you this way. If Columbus was looking to recapture, quote unquote, Jerusalem, he had to have come to Brazil. Now, I don't know that this is what is documented, but I'm going on the strength of where Jerusalem was located. Jerusalem is in Machu Picchu. That is the Citadel City. Okay. If he was coming to recapture Jerusalem, he knew damn well where it was. Okay. I don't know that they are going to speak on that. And I think that may have been erased from the record, because they don't want us to think that Jerusalem or Jerusalem was in the Americas, right? The Moors created a whole new narrative, and they put Jerusalem in Africa. So they cannot have Columbus coming to Brazil, right? That it just makes all the sense to me. But again, where else would Jerusalem would have been, according to Horace Butler and his extensive research, it was none other than Machu Picchu in Peru. That's why the Inca are from that area, but they have no written language. How convenient. How convenient. So that means you won't find any writing saying that they even built Machu Picchu. We're led to believe that they did, but that's not exactly validated, right? If they don't have a language, how do we know that they take credit for building Machu Picchu? They didn't build Machu Picchu. They found Machu Picchu. And it wasn't called that either. It was Heru. That's why the area is called Peru, House of Heru. Heru. Now that's just the city, but the surrounding country named after Heru. Heru, House of Heru. Okay. So I just wanted to throw that in. I hope you're getting that what happened. You know, that's why I wanted to revisit this Dane Calloway article. I didn't realize and realized or began to realize that he basically is speaking to that narrative of us being taken to Europe and Africa. No one really talks about us being taken to Europe, though. You see? Because we're supposed to believe that they sent their people here. Well, not exactly. You know, they did send some Caucasians here, but we were the ones that they were saying that we were slaves from Africa. No, we weren't. No, we weren't. We built up Europe for you. And then when you were done with us, you dumped us here. It's just an attempt, to me, to denationalize us and make us think that, you know, Europe was so powerful. No, well, it was empowered by American Indians, Caribbeans to be exact. So what does that mean, y'all? What does that mean? That means we didn't have to be taught farming, did we? I mean, okay, it's North America is a little different from the Caribbean, but we had the basics of farming, right? So that means we were ready for work as soon as we got here. They didn't train us, you know. They just displaced us on our own land masses. That's all. Trying to assert jurisdiction, you know, or claim jurisdiction. These Black Indians, now mistaken as African Americans, were shipped back to America, deported, as what Lee Cummings refers to it as, and classified as African slaves. This part of our history is what the school systems fail to mention in history programs. Well, now we saw, as of our last video, that the universities as well as the hospitals are very implicated in this whole charade. Those will be two institutions that will have to seriously be checked. The hospitals are so highly responsible for denationalizing and assisting in the denationalizing of American Indians, having agents provide birth certificates as soon as you're born, you know. And then again, with this whole Rona situation, once again, the hospitals to the rescue, right? To the detriment of the people. Every European nation that colonized North America utilized Indian slaves for construction, plantations, and mining on the North American continent, but more frequently in their outposts in the Caribbean and in the metropolis of Europe. Let's read that one more time. Every European nation that colonized North America utilized Indian slaves for construction, plantations, and mining on the North American continent, but more frequently in their outposts in the Caribbean and in the metropolis of Europe. We were working everywhere, Indians. Everywhere. What would the Moors have to say about that, huh? They're gonna try to say that, that was us, you was us. You're a damn liar. You were the one that headed all of this, you motherfucking. There's no words, man. Y'all really gotta rethink this Moorish bullshit. Really do. They're the ones that set up the whole Mongolian Empire. The first quote unquote Indians to steal your identity was the Mongolians, right? Thank you to the Moors, right? They went out and made sure that the world only knew their people as the what do we call them? Heathen American Indians, right? They flipped the script on you American Indians completely. Instead of being the first civilization in the Moorish world, you were the last. But now they're going to try to make it like they knew this. Yeah, but you didn't say nothing. And that's how we know that you're full of shit and you're tripping up on your own bullshit. I believe even Dane himself has commented on the fact that here we have the Moors swearing that we are them and they are us. But the narrative you made, Moors, is that we're not from North Africa. So how do you flip the script on that, huh? You're the one that made it the Middle East, right? So you're a North African Berber and all that, right? But we are said to not be from that area. So I think you're tripping up on your whole foolish story. And you need to just stop it, okay? You got to decide how much lying do you need to do when it's conflicting with your other lies? Okay? You have separated yourself from us so that you can denationalize us, while you claim some Moorish nationality, right? Morocco, right? Spain and all of that, right? The Mongolian Empire. That's all you. Right, Moors? You started all of that. But you want us to believe that you had nothing to do with America being seen as the last place civilization visited. That is your narrative, Moors. You put that out there. You know how we know you did? Because you were silent. You didn't stop the narrative. You helped promote it. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Again, when the world only knows Mongolian Indians, that's a function of you, Moors. That's a result of your acquiescence, shall we say, one of your favorite words. You didn't say anything. And yet we're supposed to believe that we are you and you are us. You're out there building all these different nations and races, right? but none of them know about us in the Americas until you send your Mongolians here, or you tell only their story and not ours. So no, Morris, no. Your fraud is revealed. You are not the friend of the American Indian. By no means. You are the worst enemy. So let us continue. Between 1670, oh, wait a minute. All historians note that nowhere is there more authentic documentation than in South Carolina, also known as the original English colony of Carolina, established in 1670. It is estimated that between 1650 and 1730, at least 50,000 Indians, and likely more due to transactions hidden to avoid paying government tariffs and taxes, were exported by the English alone to their Caribbean outposts. Between 1670 and 1717, far more Indians were exported than Africans were imported. See, that's how they are trying to usurp us off of our own land, sending foreigners here to take our place, and ship us over there and say, oh, you're from there and they were here. In southern coastal regions, entire tribes were exterminated through slavery compared to disease or war. In a law passed in 1704, Indian slaves were conscripted to fight in wars for the colony long before the American Revolution. Let's read it one more time. Between 1670 and 1717, far more Indians were exported than Africans were imported. In southern coastal regions, entire tribes were exterminated. The coastal region. So that could include the Carolinas, and down, maybe even Virginia, through slavery compared to disease or war. In a law passed in 1704, Indian slaves were conscripted to fight in wars for the colony long before the American Revolution. Brief Indian slavery complexity. Indians found themselves caught in between colonial strategies for power and economic control. The fur trade, I think of the Algonquians when I think of the fur trade, because they, I would have been of the Algonquian linguistic group and tribes, So the Indians found themselves caught in between colonial strategies for power and economic control. The fur trade in the Northeast, the English plantation system in the South, and the Spanish mission system in Florida collided with major disruptions to Indian communities. So we just had all this European influence, just further, causing division, and disruption. Just fighting over our land, right? Indians displaced from the fur trade, that would have to have been the Algonquin. In the north, migrated south, where plantation owners armed them to hunt for slaves living in the Spanish mission community. The French, okay, that's Algonquin as well. The French were basically nuzzling up with the Algonquins, while the Iroquois were apparently in bed with the British more so. I mean, at different times it was, I guess, mixing, but I think the basic, uh, you know, proverbial line was drawn with French and Algonquin versus Iroquois and British. The French, the English, and Spanish often capitalized on the slave trade in other ways. For example, they garnered diplomatic favor when they negotiated the freedom of slaves in exchange for peace, friendship, and military alliance. Okay. All right. In another instance of Indian colonial complicity in the slave trade, the British had established ties with the Chickasaw, who were surrounded by enemies on all sides in Georgia. Chickasaw. I want to quickly see what the Chickasaw, who they were. Were they Iroquois? Chickasaw. Chickasaw. Was that how we spelled it? Indian. Okay. The Chickasaw Indian history. Let's see. I have a feeling. Uh-oh. Chickasaw. Let's see. Chickasaw Nation. Chickasaw. I want to see what what linguistic group they were from. I'm guessing Iroquois. Chickasaw, North American Indian tribe of Muskogean linguistic. Okay, Muskogean linguistic stock who originally inhabited what is now northern Mississippi and Alabama. In their earlier history, the Chickasaw and the Choctaw, I don't know how to say it, may have been a single tribe. Traditionally, the Chickasaw were a semi-nomadic people who patrolled the immense territory that they claimed for themselves and raided tribes as far to the north. Like many conquering peoples, they integrated the remnants of these tribes into their culture. Prior to the 1830s, Chickasaw dwellings were organized along streams and rivers rather than clustered in villages. Descent was traced through the maternal line. The supreme deity was associated with the sky, sun, and fire, and a harvest and new fire rite similar to the green corn ceremony of the Creek was celebrated annually. Okay, so they were in, okay, let's see. Probably the earliest contact between Europeans and the Chickasaw was Hernando de Soto expedition in 1541. In the 18th century, the Chickasaw became involved in the power struggles between the British and the French, siding with the British against the French and the Choctaw. They also gave refuge to the Natchez in their wars with the French. Relations with the United States began in 1786 when their northern territory boundary was fixed at the Ohio River. In the 1830s, they were forcibly removed to Indian Territory, present Oklahoma, where the Creek, Cherokee, Choctaw, and Seminole, they were among the 5 civilized tribes. For 3/4, okay, 5 civilized tribes. So that is telling me that they were, the 5 civilized tribes. Okay. For 3/4 of a century, each tribe had a land allotment and a quasi-autonomous government model on that of the United States. In preparation for Oklahoma statehood, 1907, Some of this land was allotted to individuals from the 5 civilized tribes. The rest was opened up to non-native homesteaders held in trust. Couldn't even get a whole state for themselves, right? Trust by the federal government or allotted to freed slaves. Now, freed slaves would have been the emancipated children of American Indians of the South, right? They were not actually slaves, okay? Tribal governments were effectively dissolved. Now, why would they do that, right? Because they're taking away your sovereignty. Once the tribal governments were dissolved, there was no treaty. You know that so how you know you're an actual nation is if you have a treaty. But you know what? It's at the point now where we shouldn't be even having a foreigner on our land. Now, take that as you will. I am a peaceful American Indian. What I'm saying is either those seats get filled with Indians, or, as Anna says, he's on a dissolving corrupt corporations kick right now. That would be the major one that would need dissolving, right? I mean, they've already went against our Constitution, right? They have. If you reclassify free persons and Indians, and now they are no longer even they're not okay. An Indian is mentioned in the Continental Constitution, but if you reclassify Indians, you have taken them out of that Constitution, right? So you have effectively nullified the Continental Constitution, United States Corporation, and so that's a form of treason. Would it not be? Right? So you have a whole agenda that I don't think you really, by all appearances, this entity has no interest in quote unquote serving people. It has an interest in serving corporations or corporate entities. Okay? That's about it. Because those are children of the corporation. Little corporate entities are the children of the so the corporation becomes the baby daddy. And they're not interested in you being all sovereign and stuff. So tribal sovereignty is a total joke within this corporation, okay? That's what we had before they turned us into what they turned us into, little corporate franchise. So they recreated it, and now they're out to control it. And basically, I want to say suffocate it out of existence. If you're dependent on benefits and privileges, you might not get them all the time. Constitutional rights you get all the time, 24/7, all day, every day. Benefits and privileges, not so much. You're going to have to jump through hoops for those because they're not seen as God-given. Okay? So the rest was opened up to non-native homesteaders. It's like you couldn't even get a state to yourself. It was, in Oklahoma, which was supposed to be, I guess, for all Indians, right? They couldn't even give us a whole state, right? That's what it sounds like I'm reading here. Held in trust. So they're looking to encroach wherever you are, Indians, because they're going to keep an eye on you, basically. This is what I'm gathering. They can't let you be in a state unto yourself because they need you to be in conflict or even in competition with some other than yourself, right? So you don't even get a state to yourself, right? You're sharing even the land that you were deported to from your Indian removal, from your home, your original. But your original land was all yours, and this Oklahoma stuff is for you and homesteaders. And you remember Martin Luther King was not too thrilled with the Homestead Act. What did he say? The government was giving away, you know, our land. Even where they put, put us. They don't get to push us around on our land, Indians. They have committed such atrocities against us. It's amazing that our mouth even speaks corporation like it's our friend and that's our old buddy, just waiting for us to wake up so it could be our friend again. Just waiting for us to remember that we're the Indians. So once again, they can now, but they never were. It's my point. Okay. They can pretend now that they're happy that you're waking up. But I think we should use our common sense on these things and realize that no, this is the same entity that reclassified you in the first place. The same entity that's trying to dead you now. Trying to get all in your veins with their concoctions. Trying to pull rank. If they're the Indians and they're the owners of the land, what we got to do now is get into their bloodstream so that we could vicariously be Indians through them and run how they run things. We run it because they're transhuman now. Some of this land was allotted to individuals from the 5 civilized tribes. The rest was open up to non-homesteaders, non-native, held in trust by the federal government. And this was not part of the enumerated functions of Congress, okay? Holding lands in trust, okay? As we learned from Anna, trusts are for dead people. Anna made the statement that the first form of trust that men and women ever really involved themselves in was the last will and testament. So she said basically that is the first trust that men and women dealt with. So trusts are for dead things, preparing for your death. So when you make a trust, all you're doing is, basically creating something that a living man and woman really can't partake in. Like it's, let's just say you die off and someone else can get your trust. Okay. Let's just call it like it is. Okay. There's got to be something that is for living men and women other than a trust. And Anna, according to Anna, we shouldn't involve ourselves in trust. It's putting it in a jurisdiction where it's in almost like an object of commerce, where it should be more in the land soil jurisdiction, a trust. But we would have to, really zoom in on how Anna has actually, she wrote an article about trust. So maybe at some point, you could read that. Okay. Tribal governments were effectively dissolved. That's exactly what has to happen to the corporation. It has to be dissolved. It has not served the interest of even Americans or America. It's so foreign run that it just has no use for us as American Indians or any Americans at this point. Seriously. And that's just facts. This is not talking against. This is talking facts. We are peaceful American Indians looking at how we have been displaced and the entity that did that. Okay, that's all we're doing. Okay, you're not talking a foreign language here. or are we talking any kind of something that is treason or anything like that? In fact, we are the victims of treason. Okay, that's what really happened. Okay. Okay. Tribal governments were effectively dissolved in 1906, but have continued to exist in a limited. See, that's what it's about: limiting your sovereignty to naught. So it's non-existent. So you're not even sovereign anymore. And then Congress has plenary authority over you. That is not sovereignty by any stretch. Okay. No corporation should have authority over men and women. But when those men and women are turned into corporate entities, of course the corporation will have domination over you because it recreated as a little franchise, okay, a little trust or something, okay. Tribal governments were, so yeah. Some Chickasaw now live on tribal landholdings that are informally called reservations. Again, Indians should not be on reservation. This is our land. You don't put me to a little portion of it while you this entity just taking over. Early estimates placed the tribe's population at 3,000 to 4,000. At the time of their removal to Indian territory, they numbered about 5,000. Chickasaw descendants numbered more than 38,000 in the early 21st century. Okay, so I think that's it. That was, we were just looking at Chickasaw. Well, we did want to click on this for a minute. What do they say? What are the 5 civilized tribes? I thought that was the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay. The 5 civilized tribes. Term that has been used officially and unofficially since at least 1866 to designate the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, and Seminole Indians in Oklahoma, former Indian Territory. Beginning in 1874, they were dealt with as a single body by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So these are basically, white $5 Indians, okay? Bureau of Indian Affairs and U.S. Department of Interior, because we know they don't, this entity, this corporation called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, do not see us, quote unquote, Negroes as Indians, right? But there has never been any unification or overall organization of these tribes under that name. The word civilized was applied to the 5 tribes because, broadly speaking, they had developed extensive economic ties with whites or had assimilated into American settler culture. Why would we have to do that? Why would we want to do that? Some members of these southeastern tribes had adopted European clothing, spoke English, practiced Christianity, and owned slaves or indentured servants, right? In 1821, the Cherokee developed a written language, oh Lord. And by 1828, the Cherokee Phoenix, the first Native American newspaper, began publication. The Cherokee also established a strong central government with a constitution based on the U.S. Constitution. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 authorized President Andrew Jackson to accelerate the westward movement of Europeans by relocating Indian tribes to unsettled land west of the Mississippi River. While the act had explicitly provided for the purchase of land from willing parties, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole had little desire to leave their established community to begin anew beyond the frontier. When faced with forced removal, the Cherokee used the American federal court system to press their claims against the state of Georgia. Although the Supreme Court twice ruled in favor of the Cherokee Nation, Georgia ignored the ruling, and Jackson is said to have declared privately Chief Justice John Marshall has made his decision. Now let them enforce it. Oh. Excuse me. Challenged by U.S. government that refused to respect Indian property rights. Or the rulings of its own judiciary. Oh. The so-called five civilized tribes were left with few options. See, even when you're civilized, you get fucked. So what is the advantage exactly of becoming federally recognized? So you can become federally fucked? We cannot repeat history and think that we're going to get over. We cannot make the same mistakes 100 zillion times and wonder why we're still getting fucked. Pardon my French. We're going to be very frank. Because we got to emphasize what's going on here. These civilized tribes are not getting treated very good, are they? No, once you take on the federal misnomers, you're their bitch. You're like a hoe. Work that corner and shut up. Sweet daddy did not give you these rights that you think he did. Okay. Civilized. And they get to do the most uncivil things. You see? The Seminole waged a prolonged and costly guerrilla war, but most of the tribe ultimately emigrated to the West. Just pushing you to the ocean, right? The process of forced removal became known as the Trail of Tears. That's what the federally recognized tribes got, a Trail of Tears. After you give up everything you were to be part of this bullshit, look how you get treated. And we want to redo this again. Now that we're waking up, we're going to redo the same old shit, get fooled by the same federal corporation that's going to bitch you out like they did to the five civilized tribes. Right? But we here for this. This is what we're looking forward to. Right? I'm telling you, American Indians, you better want your sovereignty back, because there's nothing else for you but a nice, good ramming. Okay? I hate to talk frank, I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell it like it is. When it comes to the American Indian, I'm going to tell it like it is, like it, hate it. It's going to be said. It has to be said. We have nothing to gain by becoming federally recognized. You better want your sovereignty back. That's the only thing that's going to give you the authority. And you're going to have to start listening to people like, I want to call them freedom fighters, people that defend the Constitution, at least, at the very least, they call this corporation back to its contract that we gave them. We have to do it that way. That's the only way to do it peacefully. So am I advocating war against the government? No, I am not. I'm advocating a return to the Constitution known as the Continental Constitution. That's what I'm calling for. And if this corporation feels like that's treason or some shit, you are sorely misguided. You done lost your mind. You just forgot your boundaries. Oh, Trail of Tears. Due to the unnecessary death and hardship that characterized it, the survivors were relocated to large adjoining tracts of land in the eastern part of Indian Territory. Here they maintained a significant degree of autonomy over their internal affairs until 1907. Each organized as a nation with a written constitution and laws, and a Republican government that modeled on that of the U.S. Why would you even it's just you start to realize there's something wrong with the model if they can get to do this to us. Obviously, there's something wrong with this corporate model. Executive department headed by an elected principal chief governor, bicameral legislature, and a judiciary with elected judges and trial by jury. Yeah, and we read that tribes don't if a United States citizen commits a crime on Indian territory, the Indians cannot try that United States citizen. But the federal corporation, if an Indian commits a crime, that federal corporation can try him. Okay. So how fair is that if you're a nation within a nation or whatever? How come you don't get the same rights as the greater corporation to try a criminal? So once again, I'll say it again. Indians cannot try a United States citizen in their tribal courts, but the federal corporation can try an Indian in federal courts. You see? So that means they're taking authority over your nation. That's not real sovereignty, y'all. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's boo-boo the fool foolery. Public school systems were instituted, in part supported by tribal funds, and in part provided by Christian church missionaries. So that right there tells you wasn't teaching anything that the Christians did not approve of, right? This is not the kind of sovereignty you need. You need the sovereignty where you tell the truth about your history. But if you're federally recognized, you've given up your truth. See, that's the whole thing, is just wrong. During the American Civil War, most tribes were divided between supporters of the Union and the Confederacy, providing soldiers for each army. Now, I saw that one of my ancestors was a Confederate soldier. He was fighting for the Confederacy. Why would he do that? Well, he was fighting for his land, right? So that tells me that my family had land, right? Their territories were depopulated and devastated. Before this time, and especially following the reorganization of each nation after the war, economic and educational progress was rapid, and distinctive fusions of Indian and Anglo-American cultures developed. You see, you're being snuffed out, okay? And let's not forget the whole reclassifying, into Black. We can never forget that. Colored, Negro, Black. That's what denationalized us. You're unprotected by the Constitution. And in the hands of a commercial corporation hell-bent on just stripping you of anything you could possibly be called yours. Okay. Let's see. Okay. When transcontinental railroads were built through Indian territory and the settlement of adjoining states increased, the 5 civilized tribes lost their independence. Baby, when I tell you don't want to fuck with this corporation, I mean what I say. Okay, we just have to. What am I saying? I'm not saying that I can do it by myself. Okay, but somewhere as a group, as American Indians reawakening, we have to learn from the past, or we're doomed to repeat it. We cannot approach this corporation as a little creation of the corporation. You have to step to the corporation with the authority of your birthright as American Indians. So if we have, the way I see it, a lot of our Indians who have lawsuits, we want to let the corporation know that we're not coming, even though we're suing you in your court. That's just because we're suing you. You know, it's not because we're under the jurisdiction of you. Okay, we just have to go at um and I don't think we should allow for any of our cases to be closed cases, because we become complicit. That's what they did with Nasara and Jasara. That's why nobody knows about Nasara and Jasara. The farmers had to shut up and get a payday, and the shenanigans continue to this day. And I don't, it seems to me that I don't know that a lot was solved. You get paid, but the issue does not go away, right? Like, it's like the more they give you, the more they feel you owe them. Even if you win it in a case, it seems like, these closed documents. How is that justice? But if we have an authority that is above and beyond the corporation, they can't be closed. You know what I'm saying? It's only closed when the corporation is dealing with you as something that it created. But it didn't create us American Indians, or else it wouldn't have had to reclassify us, right? If it created us, it would have never had to reclassify us. Okay. So let's finish this article, and we have to return to Dane Calloway's article just to finish it. Between 1893 and 1907, when Oklahoma became a state, and it wasn't a real state, it would have had to become a state of Oklahoma, which is a corporate entity, not the men and women of the land or the Indians of the land. So this was a state of state corporate creation. It's not a land soil state. Okay. So it doesn't tie to the Constitution. Okay. Okay. The U.S. government forced the allotment of the tribal lands to individual enrolled tribal members, including freedmen, former slaves of the Indians. Oh my gosh, the children of the Indians were called former slaves, freedmen. It's so interesting how they use words, right? So they calling your children freedmen. We're gonna take a pause for a minute, and I have to take a break. I'll be right. Okay, we are back, and let's see, where's our article at? Did something happen to pop up in front of our article? Okay, so we were reading about the 5 civilized tribes. I had to take a break, and we're back. Indian allottees lost their land. Okay, wait a minute. That's not where we stop. Between 1893 and 1907, when Oklahoma became a state, which is a corporate entity, not the real state. Okay. The U.S. government forced allotment of tribal lands to individual enrolled tribal members, including freedmen, former slaves of the Indians, and abrogated the national governments. Okay. They abrogated the national government. Okay. Former tribal land was open to white settlement. Wow. And many Indian allottees lost their land through unscrupulous practice. I ask you, Indians, what did you gain? by agreeing to become a civilized tribe, but a whole lot of disappointment and disrespect. Abrogated. What is abrogated? Okay, it sounds like, shit was ignored. Let's see. Abrogated definition. Repudiate, revoke, repeal, rescind, overturn, overrule, repeal, to do away with. Okay. It's to repeal or do away with a law, right, or formal agreement. So can we go back to what we were reading? Is this it? Uh-oh. Okay, so that, okay, where were we reading? Let me see. Okay, here we are. And abrogated the repealed the national government. Former tribal land was open to white settlement. What a huge slap in the face. If we don't learn from the past, we are doomed to repeat it. What am I saying? Maybe we should consider the 13% that Dane is talking about. I mean, I would think that it would be open to tribes as well as individuals, I would think. Something like that would be a break from this bullshit. I'm telling you, nothing has changed. If Indians think that our waking up is just the right thing that will make the government change what it's doing, it won't. Not if we haven't learned from the past. They'll just punk us again like they punked these poor fools in the past. Now this includes these fake Indians, does include our people who, sold out as well. Okay. So you're losing out either way. Indian allottees, former tribal land was open to white settlement, and many Indian allottees lost their land through unscrupulous practices. How do you have a constitution and be victim of unscrupulous practice? How does that happen? It happens when you get reclassified and you're no longer under the Constitution. That's how it happened. The tribal governments have continued in modified form to the present, but with significantly less. Did I not say, oh, ancestors, you too much today? But with significantly less sovereignty. Less sovereignty is just another way, a sweet, kind, gentle way of saying no sovereignty, okay? If you have less sovereignty, it is not sovereignty, period. Did I not say there is no sovereign Indian tribe on American landmass? There's my validation, okay? I accept this as validation. The corporation is not, it can't have that. If it did allow that, it would mean the beginning of the end of the corporation. Do you think they're trying to end this bullshit? Do you think if we just go for the okie doke, they're not going to encourage that? Had us on our little asses, and the bullshit begins again. We have look at that highlight, please, American Indians, and tell me, what do we have to do to not be part of that bullshit? Do you think we have to take our whole sovereignty, or will half 99 and a half do? All tribal members are full citizens of Oklahoma and the United States. That does not make a lick of sense. You can't serve two masters. Isn't that what your Bible says for you who insist upon being Christians, the colonizer religion. Well, that's for you. Can you serve two masters? One has you as a slave, and the other one is you as your sovereign self. The tribal governments have continued in futility, you might add, in modified form to the present. Modified by who? None other than the corporation, okay? But with significantly less sovereignty. If Congress has plenary authority over all tribes, boo-boo, you don't have any sovereignty. You're supposed to be over Congress. But if they don't represent you and they are foreign agents, then you're left with nothing, okay? Significantly less sovereignty. That's just, again, a kind, sweet, gentle way of saying you have no sovereignty, American Indian. There is no sovereign, and a lot of Indians think that's okay. You're sorely mistaken. Once again, you're sorely mistaken. It's not okay. Because now we are disgracing the ancestors. They wake us up and we settle for the okey doke and think it's all good. It's not good enough. Significant. That's what they have us lined up for, Indians. That's what they're going to give us when we, that's what, if we let them, that's what we're going to end up just like these civilized tribes, dependent on the government, jumping through hoops to get their little pieces of fiat, whatever. Not in control of any of our resources, not even any on our reservations. We still jump into the beat of the corporation. If we think that coming and reclaiming ourselves in name only is good enough, we better rethink everything. You might as well stay a fucking colored Negro, black, or African. You might as well. At least it doesn't show you up as a bigger fool being an Indian and still being a slave. The Bureau of Indian Affairs provides some services. Now, it's a Bureau of Indian Affairs. You would think it provides a full range, right? It's Indian Affairs, right? After all, right? Some services for enrolled tribal members, but no reservation system is in effect. But what does that mean, y'all? That means what it sounds like is you ain't got no land. You ain't even got no reservation. No reservation system is in effect. Fine. We don't want that bullshit. We want all our land back. But it's necessary. It's necessary. All the corporation is going to do is encroach on whatever. If you settle for crap, you're going to get crap. What does having all our land back mean to American Indians? Okay, let's work it out for the corporation. Okay, it doesn't mean that you get kicked off immediately. No, what it means is you owe us now. You're on our land. You pay us. That's all it means. It's just basically you're no longer free riding on our land. If you're on our land, you owe us rent, right? Right? So that's all. You can stay here until you're fully dissolved and, finish up the bullshit that you started or whatever, pack up, whatever you need to do. But it's not an immediate thing. We're not like you. We just want our authority back. And we deserve that. You've been knocking us and kicking us around for far too long. It's ungodly at this point. For those who thought that they were bringing God to us, where is he? So let's get back to, this has been very dismal. I really hate reading all this bullshit is so uninspiring. But it is for learning purposes because we really need to get clear of what we're settling for when we settle for the crumbs from slave master table in your kitchen, right? Serving you crumbs in your house and in your kitchen. It just don't make sense. Yeah, they sent us out of our territory. So once that happens, basically you're having trouble with the Indians that because as we learned, you know, um, Indians had their territory and we weren't really allowed to encroach on each other's territory. So once these Indians are removed, they apparently put on some other Indians' land, right? As quiet as it's kept, that it had to be the case, you know, because we're being displaced. Well, anyway, that's just tribes moved from east of the Mississippi River. So all the pink, yeah, it looks like, you know, man. Hmm. Well, that's kind of a lot. Um, all right now. Look at it. Do all of these people would they even fit in? Let me see. Oklahoma. China. No, that's Omaha. I'm sorry, I don't see Oklahoma on this map. Do I? Oklahoma. Where is it? Okay. This map is not as easy to decipher. I'm trying to see Oklahoma, but anyway, let's uh get back to this Dane Calloway article and try to finish. Oh wow, it's 3 of 12 pages. It's a lot. Okay. Uh the French and English and Spanish often capitalized on the slave trade in other ways. For example, they garnered diplomatic favor when they negotiated the freedom of slaves in exchange for peace, friendship, and military alliance. In another instance of Indian and colonial complicity in the slave trade, the British had established ties with the Chickasaw, who were surrounded by enemies on all sides in Georgia. They conducted extensive slave raids in the lower Mississippi Valley, where the French had a foothold, which they sold to the English as a way to reduce Indian populations and keep the French from arming them first. Hmm. Hmm. So, okay. British had established Chickasaw was surrounded by enemies. They cannot extensive with the okay. So the Brits were conducting raids where the French had a foothold. They sold to the English as a way to reduce Indian population, and keep the French from arming them first. Ironically, the English also saw it as a more effective way to civilize them compared to the efforts of the French missionaries. The extent of the Indian slave trade. The Indian slave trade covered an area from as far west and south as New Mexico, then Spanish territory, northward to the Great Lakes. Historians believe that all tribes in this vast swath of land were caught up in the slave trade in one way or another. Slave trade. It's so interesting, that use. Because as far as I know, we're talking about, once again, the children of the Indians, this corporation as called them slaves to their own family, either as captives or as traders. Okay, historians believe that all tribes in this vast swath of land were caught up in the slave trade in one way or another, either as captives or as slave traders. Slavery was part of the larger strategy to depopulate the land to make way for European settlers. Slavery was part of the larger strategy to depopulate the land to make way for European settlers. When I read that, I'm thinking we're talking perhaps indentured servitude of Caucasians. Because if you had a Caucasian working on your land, after a while, he could take your farm. Okay. So there's two different slaveries we're talking about here: indentured servitude and that of minors working on their parents' farm. Both of these are just being called slavery when they're completely different. One, the indentured servant, that's the foreigner working for the colonizer, or working for the Indians. That these are foreigners working for the Indians, but under, by means of colonization, being dumped here, whatever. So the white Europeans are indentured servants, but those who are being called slaves are actually the children of the farmers who work the farm. They're the ones that's going to be emancipated, leaving the land. So if your child doesn't inherit your land, you have an indenture who once you can't afford your farm anymore, the indenture gets your land, right? That's what I'm reading into this when, putting the pieces together. So they chase your kids off the farm through emancipation. They go running up north to be slaves for foreigners instead of their own parents. I ask you, which is better to be a slave for, your parent or some foreigner where you don't get a payoff? With your parents, you get the farm for your kids. With the foreigner, you get zilch. You get taxed. You get rent. You get mortgage. But the young people, they didn't know nothing about this, right? They just saw what the corporation was dangling, like a carrot, and they thought it was a way out. They didn't know that you lost everything. You caused your family to lose their farm. You don't have a home anymore. But these are young people being manipulated by the corporation. You can't, really blame them, right? The corporation has its tactics, right? They know how to seduce the young, right? Mm-mm-mm. They didn't know. They didn't know what was really going on. Now, their parents tried to tell them, right? But all they see is, again, the bright and shiny north, right? You know, they want luxury. They don't want to work on the farm. They don't see the value in having land of your own, but the corporation does. They know they value your land, right? That's why they end up, taking it. And they get paid forever and ever and ever and ever. As long as we sit by and talk about we want to be civilized tribes, you might as well stay in Africa. You might as well stay in Africa. If you think this corporation is just thrilled to have you as a new addition, you're still going to get, well, I hate to use foul language, but you're going to get shafted. Okay. Yeah. Slavery was part of the larger strategy to depopulate the land and make way for European settlers. That was what Martin Luther King was talking about with the Homestead Act, right? As early as 1636, after the Pequot War, in which 300 Pequots were massacred, those who remained were sold into slavery and sent to Bermuda. Out with the trash, right? Major slaving ports included Boston, Salem, Mobile, and New Orleans. From those ports, Indians were shipped to Barbados. See, when you want to look at West Indians as this separate people, no, not really. No, not really. You're all being shifted around, man. But don't let the Moors get in on this. Please don't. Now, we can do it between West Indians and North Americans. You cannot do it with Moors. That's North Africa, okay, boo-boo? Look at your map and figure out which one is American and which one is North African, okay? Anything that you're calling yourself associated with North Africa is putting you under that jurisdiction, and you're not American. I don't care how much a Moor lies to you with their alternate histories, okay? Don't believe the bullshit. Okay? Indian slave. Why would, let's for a minute there. Why would any Indian want to associate with Morocco? From what we understand, the treaty, the treaty of peace and friendship. I made it peace treaty, PD. The treaty of peace and friendship. You had to say you were what? Islamic more? Or, you had to be to escape being treated like an Indian. So what good does that do for your heritage, Indian, if you have to give it up to get protections from Morocco? That's denationalizing you, right? So again, why would you want to be part of anything associated with Morocco or a sultan for that matter? That's not being sovereign, babies. That you under a sultan, you're not sovereign, okay? But these Moors are gonna, I don't know how they get around that, but you know that they slimy and grimy as they come, and they'll say something that sounds really nice, really good, and rub that ego real good. But it amounts to bullshit, okay? You really gotta rid yourself of the Moorish what do you call it? Narrative. Just get rid of it, okay? You got enough in trying to find your own heritage and lineage to be linking yourself up with your worst enemy, okay? Don't fall for it. They are not you, or else they wouldn't require you to conform to, sign over to being a Moor, right? If you was already a Moor, then you shouldn't have to join their little, change your name or whatever. That's also a way of taking on the name of your oppressor, and you change your name and become a bey and all of this and all of this. No, that's the sultan's paradigm. You're under a sultan and all that. They little system of hierarchy, okay? So just get out of it, okay? That's all I'm telling you. Just get out of it, okay? And if you don't hear this, then this is not for you, and you are meant to be an enemy of the American Indian, okay? Just don't think that this land is yours, okay? As such, don't think it. You might have gotten it through some kind of uh, partnership with Europe, and so on. But that's why it's called colonization. Okay. Uh, okay. So from those ports, Indians were shipped to Barbados by the English, to Martinique and Guadeloupe by the French, and the Antilles by the Dutch. Indian slaves were also sent to the Bahamas as the breaking ground, where they might have been transported back to New York or Antigua. The historical record indicates a perception that Indians did not make good slaves. When they weren't shipped far from their home territories, they too easily escaped and were given refuge by other Indians, if not in their own communities. They died in high numbers on the transatlantic journeys and succumbed easily to European diseases. By 1676, Barbados had banned Indian slavery, citing too bloody and dangerous an inclination to remain here. That's my grandmother's land. Hmm. Obscured in identities of native Indians. As the Indian slave trade gave way to the African slave trade by the late 1700s, by then over 300 years old, Native American women began to intermarry with imported Africans, producing mixed race offspring whose native identities became obscured through time. In the colonial project to eliminate the landscape of Indians, these mixed race people simply became known as colored people through bureaucratic erasure in public record. Hmm. Hmm. Now that is interesting. I mean, we all were called colored regardless, right? At the end of the day. Um, everybody, but that was part of making Indians African. Everybody got called colored, right? No matter what. Suffice to say, Indian was pretty much removed from you if you looked a certain way. You they made Indian strictly a color code. So they wanted it where when you look at an Indian, you automatically say African. Okay. So colored became every Indian, no matter what. Okay. They only wanted Indians that look like Mongoloids or, yeah, Mongolians, right? So they tried to present the world this new Indian that was every bit of Asian, right? In some cases, such as in Virginia, even when people were designated as Indians on birth or death certificates or other public records, their records were changed to reflect color. Imagine a government putting you in a status just based on the way you look. Don't care what you have to say about who you are, right? That is a crime, okay? That is a crime against American Indians or indigenous people. Census takers determining a person's race by their looks often recorded mixed race people as simply black, not Indian. Okay. So we had some turban wearers. Mm-hmm. And you know the Moors are going to jump all over that, right? But those are not fezzes, right? Those are not red, you know. Anyway, they're still going to, you know, claim, oh, that was it. Shut up, liars. The result is today that there's a population of people of Native American heritage and identity, particularly in the Northeast, who are not recognized by society at large, sharing similar circumstances with the freedmen of the Cherokee and other five civilized tribes as documented on the Dawes Rolls cards by the United States Dawes Roll Administration. Native American Indian tribes have been awarded nearly $1 billion in a historical settlement in early September 2015. Native American tribes won settlements against the U.S. Department of Justice, totaling in the amount of $940 million. I think we forget about this part of the article. But that has nothing to do with us, right? American Indians. Native American Indian tribes have been awarded nearly $1 billion in historical settlement in early September 2015. 645 Native American tribes won settlements against the U.S. Department of Justice, totaling in the amount of $940 million. The Department of Justice. Is that who we go to? The United States government was very fearful that more Native Indians, also known as colored Negro, black, or blank, meaning no race mentioned on their birth certificate, will discover their true history and bloodline heritage, and that they will be forced to grant them all reparations. And land. Let's read that again. The United States government was very fearful that more Native Indians, also known as colored, Negro, black, or blank, meaning no race mentioned on the birth certificates, will discover their true history and bloodline. So they quickly gave these, I don't know if it was these dudes, but I'm going to say those amalgamated $5 Indians got this money, right? Nearly $1 billion, right? 645 Native American tribes, one settlement. What happens after they win this, though? Nothing really changes, you see? Like, you can imagine without having, like, we read that the Jews got gold from Germany and gold backed currency from Germany. What did these Native American tribes get? They got fiat, not backed by gold. Okay. They got monopoly money that goes very quickly, comparative to getting the resources of the land. You know, that you can, we read that those same Jews, they got natural resources as well as gold. So, in other words, they were fit to be independent. Not these Indians. First of all, you're getting that weird sovereignty that is really not sovereignty, and you're getting a lot of fiat that's just going to be eaten up by the corporation. So, nothing changes, is what I'm trying to say. You get this lump sum, then it's back to business as usual, go into obscurity. You know, the money gets ran out. You didn't get no land, did they? Didn't say they did. without the land, it's just the money just goes quickly. You gotta, that money has to be invested in land. It has to go for your farming uh material and the things you need for farming. You have to have access to commerce, the ports. You have to have a port that only you, it's run by you, not the feds, right? So you can conduct business on a, you know, international level or even in a national level freely as an Indian of the land. So other Indians have to have access to their natural resources to trade with other Indians who have access to their natural resources. You can't just get this money and that's it. The system knows that ain't going to get you sovereignty. And then when the payday is over, what? We paid you now. Now what you want from us? We don't got to give you nothing else. That's why land is forever, right? It's an inheritance that goes to your children forever. With this little money, you don't get no land. The money runs out. Probably is before the next generation, or maybe after the next generation. And if you didn't, if you just, you would have to use that money. What I'm trying to get at is, without your sovereignty, the money is just something that's going to return to who created it. Do you see what I'm saying? You need to get, we as Indians need to think about gold back, in terms of money. You know what I'm saying? Our land, permanent. No, none of this crap. Resources that we control, not the feds, and none of their regulation that's only going to serve to limit us and make sure that we can't prosper. So we got to be clear about what the corporation's objectives are. Are they consistent with ours? Can we do business with them when they're trying to make sure that we are not in a position to do business, period? We have to be real, and we have to look at history. That's why we look at this and we read what happened to the 5 civilized tribes. It's not looking good for them, right? So I guess that they would have been the tribes that got this money, I would think. Who else would they been giving it to? Not the real Indians, that's for damn sure. And in a few generations, it's back to the drawing board, and now you don't get nothing. The government still has your land, still owns all the, all the trade and all the commerce, and so you're back to nothing. We got to think very long term. Land is long term. A permanent inheritance for your offspring, not for foreigners. And those resources under the land, all yours. All the whole of America, Indians. Seriously, no foreigner should get to own our land over us. I mean, that's how it really is. We could gripe about how impossible that is, but it has to be possible, right? Because that would be the only right way to go. Everything else is in favor of colonizers and foreigners. So if we're going to fight this, we might as well have the states be what they need to be. And what is that? A complete retaking of our land. That's what it is. We know how to control our resources. It's just that we've been barred from it. And the foreigners are just having a party. The United States government was very fearful that more Native Indians, or American Indians, also known as colored, Negro, black, or black, meaning no race mentioned. They know how to cover their asses, right? They know that the stigma remains. That's what when we sue for pain and suffering, it should be very easy to show that no matter what they stop calling us, the stigma never stopped going, right? That's pain and suffering right there, right? So The United States government was and is very fearful that more native Indians will discover their true history and bloodline heritage, and that they will be forced to grant them all reparations and land. So the U.S. silently declared a deadline of December 31st. How do you get to declare a deadline? So the U.S. silently declared a deadline, December 31st, 2014. Now, when did it start again? So it was awarded in 2015, but the deadline was December for those people to make land claims and identity claims. So there's a limit on how you can claim your identity. You can only be an Indian in this amount of time, or else the United States don't. What kind of crap is that? Did the Jews have a time limit on their claiming who they were? Even though the deadline has passed, there are thousands of native Indians still winning settlements through the U.S. Supreme Court, and most commonly through the United Nations Court. So do not give up your fight, because where there's a will, there's a way. Okay. The only thing I would add to this excellent, work, we can't even depend on the courts, people. In other words, it's a whole jurisdiction issue, you know. I do feel we could learn so much from the state nationals. That's why I try to let people expose them to how a foreigner talks about the corporation. That's how we should be talking. Because although I didn't say it in my last video, again, if we are fighting to become inferior sovereigns while foreigners are fighting for full sovereignty, guess what? They're going to have more sovereignty than the American Indian, because they fought for that. They knew what was at stake here. The American Indian is still, I think we're still thinking that we're going to get justice from this corporation. It's not possible. They will always make you second and themselves first. You have to take first. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking in a peaceful, lawful, constitutional manner. So the United Nations, as we learned, is a corporate entity. The Supreme Court works for a corporate entity, although I believe they do hear common law cases. They pick and choose those. So that's not good enough. Also, they've had rulings that are less than let's say good news for American Indians. So the Supreme Court is this, what do I say? It's like this wild card, you know? It kind of, well, we could look at the whole what was his name? Dred Scott decision, right? That was a Supreme Court case, wasn't it? Now it excuses itself by letting us know that the judge tried to explain to uh what was it, Mr. Scott or Dred or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know his name. Natty Dread, I don't know. He tried to tell him that if you were an Indian, I could fight for you, but because you're black, when you read the Dred Scott decision, or what the judge had to say, because he had to make this whole speech before he rejected. He covers his ass, right? That's what they do. That don't mean you're going to get justice, right? They just going to tell you how you could have gotten justice. But we have to make that claim. If the judge tells us, of course he's working for the corporation. So he just has to tell you why he has a right to not allow Dred Scott his freedom, because you said you're African American, and in this country, African Americans cannot be citizens, and they're not entitled to freedoms, and you're not protected by the corporate Constitution. But Indians are. So I'm just saying that the Supreme Court is not really our best friend, neither is the United Nations. Now, what the United Nations is doing, and I've been wanting to say this for a while, they are not mentioning American Indians. The Constitution does. We have to tie back to the original contract in order to deal with the fraud. If we make up a new term like indigenous people or Aboriginal or Native American, our Constitution says nothing about that. Do you understand what I'm trying to break down to you today? Please let me get a yes, sir, I do, please. You got to go with the wording that is in the document that will convict the corporation. That at this point, this is the only reason why we really want to stick to the Constitution. To be very honest with you, I do think it needs an overhauling. I'll be honest with you. But for now, it will do, because, again, it calls out the crime committed by the corporation. If they don't get convicted, if there is no other document that will convict them, I hope Indians can grasp that. If we don't go by our own Constitution, we will be in some other jurisdiction other than our own, and the corporation goes scot-free because they didn't have any obligation to any other contract. We have to look at the Constitution as a contract where we can win, citing how the contract was breached by, namely Congress. So what does that contract refer to us as, Indians? I just gave you a big hint. What does that contract refer to us as, Indians? That would be Indian. So you can skip along with Aboriginal all you want. That's not going to win you points with the corporation, okay? It's going to take you probably in the vicinity of Australia, somewhere in that vicinity. Oh, that's the only thing, because the Constitution don't know nothing about Aborigines, okay? It doesn't. It knows something about Indians, whether you like it or not. So tired of this rigmarole, this foolishness, like somebody speaking Greek just by telling you got to go by the document and what the wording was there. It was Indian, point blank, period. It didn't interchange Indian with Aboriginal. I don't care where you found a place where Aboriginal means the same thing as Indian. It's not in the Constitution, baby. Okay? So that's the only document that counts. You could look up every other document. The corporation gonna be looking at you like, well, what that got to do with me? You got to show them what document they have to do with. And it's called the 1787 Constitution, baby. Get with it. Get into it. That's the only thing that will convict the corporation. Now, if the UN convicts the corporation, again, that has nothing to do with America. That's another jurisdiction, and it won't convict them as hard because it's the corporation. The United Nations was created by the corporation. Let's just cut to the chase. So the daddy baby is not going to come for the daddy, okay? He's just going to make it look like he did because daddy give him a spanking. I made you, you know it's true. United Nations potato head. I made you. You come for me, I will do something that you won't like because you created by me, the corporation. The Constitution was not created by the corporation. That was created by men and women of the land for the United States. You see the difference in the authority level? One, the corporation has the authority, and in the other, the organic 1787 Continental Constitution, men and women, sovereigns, have the authority. So that was just the only thing I had to say about, depending on these courts and the United Nations, which for the United Nations to have been somewhat legitimate, they would have had to refer to our Constitution, what we were called in that document, Indians. It doesn't do that. It created another misnomer called indigenous people. That could be anybody, anywhere. So you see how you get pulled off your land into a anybody, anywhere jurisdiction? That's how it's done. As Americans, we have to refer to the document that we contracted with. We did not contract with the UNDRIP organization. We were not present when UNDRIP was being drafted. That was created by the fake Indians. They are corporate constructs. Those fake Indians are corporate made. American Indians are not corporate made. We have authority over any corporation. But you have to be a man and woman of the land. You can't be in the sea jurisdiction and call rank over the sea jurisdiction master, which is the corporation. So I want to say thank you for watching. And thanks to Dane Calloway's excellent article, which was a very beginning for so many of us. And for that, we have to say thank you. That's all we can say. I don't see how people are, look at your Nana right there. Looking to the sky. You can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. That's right, mama. That's right. Look at that Indian right there. Yes. Yes. I think this will be a separate unto itself video. You know how I like to mix things together. I'm trying not to do that so much. So I want to say once again, thank you to Dane Calloway. And it was good to revisit this article. I hope you enjoyed it. Got some reminders. And we can also see where Dane has grown in his knowledge and wisdom, even from the creating of this article, which was now how many years ago? So we're all learning, we're all growing, right? And it's all good. Thank you for watching. I think that's it. I'm kind of on a roll. I might even do one more video before the night is out. So I wish you peace, love, joy, happiness, wealth, health, your land back, your identity back, and all, and I do mean all, the good things. Thank you for watching. Till next time.